The Broken Blueprint, Part 3, Other Events in 1910. The May 1910 Meeting. Events in 1910 laid the groundwork for that which followed. In January, the Pacific Union Conference, meeting in biennial session in Moraine View, heard an appeal from leaders at CME for additional financial support. The session went beyond that and voted a recommendation calling for Loma to offer a full medical course and that the controlling board be enlarged to include representation from the General Conference and all the union conferences in North America, and that all of them help support the new school. In April, the Spring Council voted to approve that recommendation and suggested 3 General Conference members of that board, including Daniels. These crucial decisions placed the control of CME in the hands of men who knew little about the medical missionary blueprint and who had never observed it in action. A representative council convened at Loma on May 6 to 10 and enacted a number of important measures. The college and the sanitarium were combined under a single organization. This action set aside Ellen White's plan that they remain separate, blend as equals, and work very closely together. Henceforth, the college ranked highest, and the sanitarium was merely an extension of it. No longer could the two learn from one another and, together, go out and do missionary work. From this time onward, medical studies, emulating more and more those in outside universities, stood foremost, and the patients were something to work on. The previous year, its name had been changed from the College of Evangelists to the College of Medical Evangelists. CME was made a General Conference institution, and a board of 10 members was selected, which included the presidents of the General Conference, the Pacific Union Conference, and the Southern California Conference. Henceforth, Daniels could heavily influence decisions regarding the school as he thought best. The first step was taken to make CME into a lookalike hospital, with the authorization of $25,000 for the construction of a small hospital on the campus, for the care of surgical and critical care patients. In contrast, the blueprint tended to focus not on a critical care patient/inpatient out pattern, but on treating patients with natural remedies, changing their lifestyle, and winning them to Christ. Dr. W.A. Rubel was placed in charge as president of the college. Although a sincere man, he did not understand the blueprint as his predecessors. The borrowing of money had begun. Although the leaders had earlier been warned not to launch out into any project which would involve Loma in heavy debt unless they fully understood how much was involved, they did it anyway. I dare not advise you in such large plans as you propose. You need to make the Lord your wisdom in these matters. I do not feel that you should plan for such large outlay of means without your having some certainty that you can meet your obligations. I would caution you against gathering a large load of indebtedness. EGW, Letter 82, 1908. Insights on surgery. Since in May 1910, the board had just voted to start Loma down a path that would lead to an ever-increasing emphasis on surgery and critical care, here are a few statements to consider. Percy T. Megan, in 1915, was elected Dean of the College at Loma and wrote this the same year. Surgical patients are not the best class of patients to teach the message to. They do not come to us with any idea in their heads as a rule of having their habits of life corrected. They come to have a little mechanical work done on their bodies so that they can be fixed up and go on in the same old way. And I fail to see any great results as far as the truth is concerned in these sanitariums where surgical work is the main thing. I am not decrying legitimate surgery, but I do not believe that it is the big thing for which our sanitariums are especially meant. God has given us a special work in dietetics and righteous physical living in every way whereby we can excel and save souls to the truth of God. I do not believe that one of God's sanitariums that is following out the light of the Lord is going to be put out of business by any worldly surgical hospital. Our mission is a way beyond their power to check. Megan to W.C. White, March 3, 1915. Ellen White wrote this: "The study of surgery and other medical science receives much attention in the world, but the true science of medical missionary work, carried forward as Christ carried it, is new and strange to the denominational churches and to the world. But it will find its rightful place when, as a people who have had great light, Seventh-day Adventists awaken to their responsibilities and improve their opportunities." Evangelism, page 518. Last night, I seemed to be in the operating room of a large hospital to which people were being brought, and instruments were being prepared to cut off their limbs in a big hurry. One came in who seemed to have authority and said to the physician, "Is it necessary to bring these people into this room?" Looking pityingly at the sufferers, he said, "Never amputate a limb until everything possible has been done to restore it." Examining the limbs which the physicians had been preparing to cut off, he said, "They may be saved. The first work is to use every available means to restore these limbs. Your conclusions have been too hastily drawn. Put these patients in the best room in the hospital and give them the very best of care and treatment. Use every means in your power to save them from going through life in a crippled condition, their usefulness damaged for life." E.G.W. Professionalism versus Simplicity, October 20, 1902, The Abiding Gift of Prophecy, pages 326 to 327, and Unpublished Testimonies, page 267. For another statement, see Testimonies for the Church, volume 8, page 187. Meanwhile, at Madison. On September 29, 1910, the College of Medical Evangelists officially opened as the denominational medical school. It was now a general conference-controlled institution. Only 10 days earlier, Percy Magan started the medical course at the University of Tennessee. As he and Ed Sutherland worked at their studies month after month, and as reports arrived of the difficulties experienced by their sister school at Loma, Magan told Sutherland emphatically that if he were out there, he would work as hard as he could and do whatever it took to get CME fully accredited with a Class A rating for the training of nurses and medical students. He also shared his concerns with his wife, Dr. Lillian, and with Dr. Newton Evans, both of whom were staff physicians at Madison. Percy Magan little dreamed of the far-ranging impact of those words and the regret that, by the 1930s, he would experience. It was indeed strange that this strong-minded Irishman would take this position. Over the years, he and Sutherland had received numerous letters from Ellen White. They were seemingly well acquainted with all aspects of the educational blueprint. But here was an omission in their grasp of the blueprint. Both recognized that the training school and the medical treatments should be radically different than those in the world. Yet neither one had a clear understanding of the fact that the medical and nurses training school should not strive for a mirror image of that which the universities of the world offered. In his many contacts with Daniels, Magan had found him frequently promoting worldly objectives. These included resistance to vegetarianism and to Ellen White's urgent calls for them to move church offices and institutions out of the cities. From bitter experience, Magan well knew that Daniels was determined to bring every independent ministry under church control. Yet Magan came to completely side with Daniels in his passion to fully accredit Loma Linda. The two men were evidently to work closely together in the achievement of that goal. A decision to become the tail. Now that Elder Daniels was in control, the changeover could begin to take place, but it would not occur without encountering many difficulties and receiving many setbacks. It repeatedly became obvious that this was a step which our denomination should never have taken. This realization grew into a gigantic nightmare as the teen years changed into the 20s and then into the 30s. The entire denomination was irretrievably affected by decisions first made in 1910. Although most may have had the best of intentions, our leaders decided to bravely push their way toward full AMA approval of Loma Linda. In making this decision, not only did they violate clear and repeated Spirit of Prophecy counsels not to take that step, but they also violated a basic financial principle. Great care must be manifested in the establishment of sanitariums, for this is an important work. Those having the work in charge should counsel with experienced brethren regarding the best plans to follow. They should count the cost of every step taken. They should not launch out into the work without knowing how much money they have to invest. Medical Ministry, page 153. In their efforts to please the AMA, within 4 years, they had driven CME into debt to the amount of over $400,000. Merlin Neff, For God and CME, page 175. Yet such a debt, contracted by 1914, was only the beginning of the great mountain of expenditures and debt that was yet to come. Because the decision to obtain accreditation had been made, Loma Linda was no longer independent. Add these courses, remove these courses, textbooks on these subjects must be used, put all these into your library, add this equipment, remodel your buildings, increase the number of beds, add more MDs and RNs. On and on it went. Ever more requirements and expenses were demanded. The present writer was told in the 1960s that by the time our hospitals were required to have smoking rooms for the visitors. What other requirements have been made? We know that Loma Linda University today has at least one full-time salaried Roman Catholic priest on its staff. When we start affiliating with the world, there is no stopping point. There will have to be a second conversion in the hearts of some of our leading medical fraternity, and a cutting away from the men who are trying to guide the medical ship into the harbor, else they themselves will never reach the haven of rest. Christ calls, come out from among them, and be ye separate. All this higher education that is being planned by some of our leading medical fraternity in Battle Creek for training regular AMA physicians will be extinguished, for it is spurious. The more simple the education of our workers, the less connection they will have with the men whom God is not leading, the more will be accomplished. EGW, Series B, number 7, page 63. Caldwell's 1912 visit. Although, as early as 1910, Loma Linda began enlarging its facilities in order to become more like the other medical schools, it was not until early in 1912 that CME began in earnest to seek accreditation. A year before that, in the fall of 1911, Dr. Nathan P. Caldwell, an inspector of medical colleges of the American Medical Association, visited Loma Linda in order to see what was happening there. No request had been made for accreditation, and Caldwell had not come to ask them to apply for it. He just wanted to see what the place looks like. But since he was there, after being shown about the place, Elder Burden invited him to his office and the two sat down and had a discussion. Dr. Rubel, CME president, later described it. This gentleman, whose business it is to inspect and examine into the entrance requirements, curriculum, equipment, faculty, and library of medical schools and offer recommendations to the association regarding their acceptance as accredited medical schools, visited us a month ago and made a thorough examination of the work we are doing. The first question he asked was, why are you starting a new school when there are already 150 medical schools in the United States? To this, reply was made practically as follows. Our object in establishing a new medical school is 1. To prepare medical missionaries to go into foreign lands to preach the gospel. 2. To provide a school where we can educate our own Seventh-day Adventist young people for our own work. 3. To give young people a training in the special lines of treatment which we pursue in our denominational institutions that are scattered throughout the world. To throw around our students an influence tending to keep them true to their determination to prepare themselves for medical work. To provide a first-class medical college where our young people may get a medical education without being obliged to violate their consciences by engaging in work on the 7th day of the week. His, Caldwell's, reply was that he was in full sympathy with such a movement and that he saw the need of such a school. W.A. Rubel in The Medical Evangelist, January 1912, pages 17 to 18. Many years later, Elder Burden recalled more of that conversation. After examining the workings of the school and conferring with the doctors regarding their plans and purposes, he, Dr. Caldwell, immediately took up the financial backing that seemed to be the prominent test in his mind. The doctors brought him to my office and turned him over to me. His first question was, "What is the financial backing of this school?" I replied that it was 110,000 consecrated people who made up all deficits occurring in any part of our mission or educational work, and who also furnished the means for our buildings and facilities by popular subscriptions, legacies, and donations. I gave him an idea of the yearly financial budget of the denomination for its world work, which seemed to be quite a surprise to him. I said, "Doctor, before going any further into the financial side of the matter, I would like to lay before you our entire missionary program. We are a world organization. Wherever we go, we build our gospel plan on a threefold foundation: the spiritual, the mental, and the physical. The Bible doctrines are the basis of the spiritual development. Christian education is the basis of the mental development and restoration. But first and foremost is the care of the body, which is supplied by our medical department. All our missionaries must have this threefold preparation to go to foreign fields, and those who remain at home need the same preparation." Will you tell me, doctor, to what school we can send our young people to equip them for this world mission work with this threefold preparation? He replied that there was no such school in existence. Then I said, "Do you propose to destroy this little medical school that we are seeking to develop, that is in no way competing with your endowed medical colleges, but is our only means for supplying our missionary program with consecrated missionaries to carry forward our work?" His answer was indirect. Said he, "Mr. Burden, when I took my medical course, it was to become a medical missionary." And I asked, "Did you go to the mission field?" "No," he said. "The medical got me and the mission lost out." I answered, "Exactly. And that is where we will fail unless we can develop such a school as this, so that we may impart to our students the medical missionary inspiration as well as the scientific preparation." From that day, Dr. Caldwell became a friend of the College of Medical Evangelists, with all the stigma of its name. He understood its purposes, appreciated its objective, and did all he could from year to year to give it advanced rating. Oftentimes, seemingly to its friends, he strained a point to raise the grade of the College of Medical Evangelists from a C grade school to an A grade in a very short time, which name apparently some of the students would now change. John Burden, letter to Dr. E. H. Risley, June 3, 1929. Before departing that afternoon, Dr. Caldwell told our leaders at Loma that, in view of the type of work they were doing, preparing missionary workers, they did not need AME approval. No accreditation was needed. Caldwell recognized something our leaders ultimately forgot. If they were preparing missionaries for overseas work, they needed no accreditation. When Elder Burden asked Caldwell if he proposed to destroy this little medical school that we are seeking to develop, he learned that Dr. Nathan Caldwell had only made an informal visit, with no intention of classifying the school. Dr. W. F. Norwood, The Vision Bold, page 193. Caldwell did not come to adopt CME as a Class C child of the AMA. He was just curious what was happening there. It was only because our leaders later begged for admission that Caldwell eventually gave Loma a C rating in late 1912.